Hi, this is On Imagination with the ethical asshole, and this is your host, the salty bitch. So I am. I just finished my post this morning for my newsletter, and this is like day 2 of cleansing out and purifying my inner circle, and it's been a real. Oh, I was putting it through with the concept of selling yourself versus being yourself. And one of the things that I wrote in my newsletter this morning was the phrase pacifist aggressor. And pacifist aggression is a really, really great way of communicating passive aggressiveness. When we hear passive aggressive, a lot of people don't quite understand what is being communicated or what even passive aggression is. So by saying pacifist aggression, it really clarifies that it is aggression, but it's nonviolent aggression. It's actually friendly aggression. Friendly aggression is when you see that it's the friend being aggressive. And this is, I guess, where we don't understand what aggressive is. We think aggression is the same as violence, and it's not. Aggression is anytime someone attacks you. And an attack can come at you peacefully. It can come at you kindly. It can come at you violently. And a lot of us associate an attack with being violence. And this is where the miscommunication is really, really strong. The words, language, logic are the foundation of understanding. I'm going to say that one again. Words and logic are the foundation of understanding. And if you do not have a foundation for understanding, you're not going to understand. There's going to be confusion. There's going to be vagueness. That vagueness is very common. And in order to clarify this, in order to clear up any confusion or vagueness you have, what ends up happening is you need to go back to the source, which is the foundation of word and logic. Word and logic are not, it's a very precise science, And it took me a very long time to realize that I received a solid education very early on, about 4 years of just this solid education in word building, word logic, so that I never had a problem with vagueness or confusion. I've always said precisely what I meant when I said it. And when I didn't or couldn't do this, I made it very clear that I was struggling with my communication skills. And then when I reached, it was about a year ago, May of 2023, when I reached a certain milestone in my education, in my language skills, my oratorial skills, the ability with which to express myself was very, very clear. And this really simplified my ability to connect with people. And I realized very quickly that there were two kinds of people. There are the kinds of people who, and everything is a spectrum. Whenever I give an example of two, it's just the extreme of the spectrum. But everyone, of course, is on this. And it was this understanding that either people connected with me and they understood or they didn't. And if you understand me, you're my people. Woo, welcome aboard. If you don't understand me, if I'm not speaking the same language as you, you're not my people. And if you are my people, or if you want to be my people, if you like my words and you want to be like that, then you've got some education to do. And this is where I had two friends, and both were always approached or presented themselves as helpful, which is the problem. They were always like, well, I'm just going to help you out. I didn't ask. I did not ask, and I did not consent, and it was not something that they invited. It was just something that they assumed. And they took it upon themselves to educate me in word and language. And this is where and this is really, it's that non-consensual, I call it the raping teacher. That's it exactly. It's that raping teacher where they assume the role of teacher even though they are underqualified. Eggs think that they're smarter than the chickens. And I had to, even though they were within my circle, I had to keep reselling myself. I would have a conversation, and instead of conversing, they would spend it correcting, teaching, and talking about my language. They just gaslit me. And when I broke down this morning the process that they used, I realized, oh, they were gaslighting me, but they did it so passively. So here, I'm going to help you out. I didn't ask for your help. I don't need help. I'm an award-nominated author. I think I know my words. And this is it exactly, is I know a word. And to have somebody tell me that I'm not using the right word, I'm like, really? Really? Like professional author. So it immediately, it immediately made me, it really truly was this wake up call for me. So I realized that I had two toxic people inside my most intimate circle. And having to resell myself to people who should have already bought the merchandise was causing severe aggression, causing severe upheaval. So instead of relaxing and enjoying and getting into the nourishing part, I was instead spending the majority of my time with these two people, defending myself and having to revisit old conversation to say, no, I said exactly what I mean. Stop trying to change my words because, and I don't know why. I don't care why. Not my problem. So I put it down and I just said, no, this is not a friendship because I have to keep reselling myself to you. Either you've bought and you're a fan or you're not. And that's a really great way of putting it is a fandom. Is the people who are in your circle are your fans. And if they are not there to support you and praise you and celebrate you, get them out. Just get them out. So when I did that, it was this massive relief, like I just dropped this massive burden. And I since then walked away from it. I've been reflecting on it since yesterday, last night, and then all morning. And it freed up this massive amount of mental space. So I don't have to spend half of my day anymore defending myself and then getting emotionally distraught over why is a friend attacking me. Instead of having that, now it's, wow, I've got all of this space where I can actually focus on what I want to focus on, which is networking, which is my business, which is trying to solve two problems that I have at the moment. And just it was wonderful. It was just this massive, massive relief of being able to step back from that and assess. So one of the things that I started to look at, I have this this program called Figma. I found new to me. It looks like it's been around for a while, and it's new to me. So I'm able to build up my what do you call this? My business models and my sequence for my business. And one of the things that I started to work on this morning was there's sequences. So you have your overall grand sequence. This is your integrated primary sequence, the mother lode or the mothership of your sequence. This is from birth to eternity. And that is exactly what this is. The next one underneath that is going to be your actual business plan. And you could say that this is your life plan. Yeah, that's a really good way of putting it, is you have your life plan. And then inside your life plan, you have your business plan. You have your personal, let's say your love life plan. And then you have your friendship plan. So I'm really, really good at networking. That is like my forte is networking. And that is something I have down. And what I did not have was a solid social friendship thing. It's literally a gap. And then I have my knowledge in business, which is extensive. So I had my business knowledge, I had my networking knowledge, and then I had friendships. And in my friendships, I was not, for the longest time, I was not good with this. So there's two relationship titles I'm going to introduce in this video. The first one is connections. And this is not new, but we're going to use it anyway, connections. And I have something called the circle of trust. The circle of trust starts off with stranger. And then after stranger, it goes into acquaintance. And then this is where it gets confusing for people, is coworkers. because you can have a coworker, but you can also, they could be a stranger coworker or an acquaintance coworker. But because you see them every single day, you might work side by side with them. You're spending 40 hours a week with them, and you don't like them, or you it's a convenience. And this is where people get very confused, because they're like, oh, they must be my friend because I know them so well. But then after 5 years, they backstab you, or you realize they weren't your friend at all. So I like to put them in another category called coworkers, which is basically a subgenre of acquaintance versus strangers, which they're acquaintance and stranger. And then after that, you have connections. And this is where the business world really opens the door to business connections, but you could have other kinds of connections. And it's very vague. It is vague, but so is the concept. So are these friends. These are, well, this is the problem. They're not friends. They're connections. They're in your network, but you do not like them. You have not done the work to know them. So this is where there's a lot of confusion. The next stage that I love to use is what I refer to as training wheel friends. This is a new term. I just invented it yesterday to really help this process along. I call this training wheel friends. Now, this is vital. These are not yet friends. These are friends you are learning friendship with. You are learning to see if they should be in your circle. And this is, I'm huge on 2 years. If they cannot make it past the 2-year mark, don't. And at least 3 years. If 3 years, they're highly incompatible. So I've got these training wheel friends. And these training wheel friends are fantastic for allowing you to see if you're a good fit, if these are friend-worthy material. And this is the vetting stage of friendship. This is the vetting stage. And this is where it's very low-key. It's very, the word I'm looking for, short-term. That's a really good term for it, short-term. So you have short-term vetting. And then after that, you have your stage 2 friends. Now, I would put the training wheel friend at stage 3. And this is where you have selected somebody out of your connections and you're thinking, oh, they might be a good match for friendship. Let's trial them out. So you have your training wheel friends at stage 3. At stage 2, they've passed the vetting of training wheel friend and you've moved them into the next stage. Now, at every one of these stages, there is a level of intimacy that takes place. And there's literally your intimacy level. And it is also, in addition to that intimacy level, it is also the flip side of that, which is just had another massive wave of just relief come over me. It's like I can feel the toxins flushing out of my system from just getting away from them. So you have your intimacy level. And on the other side of the intimacy level, you also have this radar of, the word I'm looking for, we're going to call this appropriateness. It would be called propriety. That's really what it is. It's propriety. So you have intimacy level and then you have propriety. And these things have to match. These things must match. If they do not match, there's mental illness present. If they match, you're healthy. And both people really need to have these balanced. There are some people where your intimacy level is lower or is deeper, but you are not connecting, you're not providing the information that is matching to your intimacy level, either because you are sharing too little or you are sharing too much. So oversharing or undersharing is a vital part to that balance. This is all about over and undersharing. And once you're healthy, this ratio comes naturally. So while you're going through each one of these stages, so the stranger has an intimacy and a propriety level. The acquaintance has an intimacy and a propriety level. The coworkers have an intimacy and propriety level. Connections, intimacy, propriety level. Training wheel friends. And when you go through each of these intimacy, propriety level, it reveals the truth about these people so that you can assess if you can get through this stage. It's literally like a trial that you are undergoing to see if you could take it to the next level. And then stage 2, again, it's the intimacy and propriety level. And this is where you have actual friends. This is where true friendship actually is. And then after that, stage 1, this is where your BFF is. And after BFF, you have your intimate partner. And then you have one final stage after that, and this is your solo bubble. The solo bubble is vital to your own mental health. And this is where a lot of mentally ill people will put their partner right inside your solo bubble. And that's a problem. That is a big problem. Now you have codependence. If you have your intimate partner inside your solo bubble, you now have, that's it right there. You now have your codependent. So solo bubble and then intimate partner. And then stage 1, this is where your BFF is. And then true friendships, training wheel friendships, connections, coworkers, acquaintances, strangers. And then making sure that your intimacy level and your propriety is balanced with each one of these stages. So when I was going through this, this is friendship. And this I'm very familiar with. I'm like, oh, this is friendship. Okay. So I put this circle of trust together to help me when I needed it evaluate when I should be intimate with someone, when I should use propriety, and to allow my mind to adapt to or follow this mathematical pattern. That way, it was while I was healing, so I could understand and remind myself, train my subconscious mind a healthy relationship with people. And in addition to this, I partnered this up with the 12 ethics, which was phenomenal because I had 12 checkpoints of if they violate these 12 checkpoints, red alert. Now, the first 6 ethics are not negotiable. These are not negotiable. You break these 6 ethics and we're done. These are, we're talking self-authority, your freedom, like right to consent, that kind of stuff. The next one that we have is your self-regulation. If they can't regulate themselves, if you're not regulating yourself, big problem. If you cannot self-nourish or you don't have courage to even communicate with them, if they don't have the courage to even communicate with you, red flag. Your boundaries is for your ability to use self-control and use your own discernment. If you do not have boundaries, if they do not express boundaries, if they seem to be without boundaries, red flag. Accountability, massive, massive, massive red flag if they're not holding themselves responsible or being accountable. And then equal footing, if they either have no self-value or they are treating you like you are less than them. These are all red flags. Like this is the bare minimum. Now, the next 6 ethics are harder to come by in people. And they're not quite necessarily mandatory, but they're still, you really want them. The 12th is, we're going to go backwards now. The 12th is non-judgment. The next one, the 11th, is logic. And the 10th is emotional fluidity. Now, if you are using self-regulation and you are using boundaries, your 10th ethic of emotional fluidity will be fine. And then 9th is your human connection. Your 8th is your ability to transmit idea. Your 7th is your ability to receive idea. And there you go. So reception, transmission, human connection. And then in addition to that, you have the 4 cardinal values, which are the integration of these 12 ethics, which is trust for the first 3 and then justice for the next 3. You have human empathy, true empathy. Let's change that to compassion. You have compassion for the next 3. And then the last one would be your discipline to navigate in a social situation. So those are your 4 cardinal values. Beautiful, beautiful things to keep in mind. It really puts it in perspective for you. So when you have the circle of trust plus the 12 ethics, you literally have all the tools you need to navigate any kind of a situation. Like you are set, you are solid with this. So when you have your circle of trust, your 12 ethics, it allows you the ability to train yourself and then master the skill of social situations. So there's 3 concepts going here. And I was putting the 3 of them together and I realized what the problem is. First of all, you have your business network. And then you have, and that's a whole category thing. And then in addition to the business network, you have your friendship, which that's where I do the circle of trust. And then you have the original business, or let's go traditional business model. And this is the work that I was doing this morning when I had this massive epiphany and I went, oh my God, I need to do a YouTube video. So what I did when I was looking at 3 data points, you see what I got here? 3 data points. So when I sat down and I looked at my 3 data points, I'm very familiar with the traditional business model. And this is you need a funnel. And I hate this. There's everything about the traditional business model I hate, because it is criminal psychology applied, literally, it is criminal psychology applied to business practices. It is fucking disgusting. So I ruled this out a long time ago. And that's one of my obstacles is, if you're not using the traditional business model on your business, then how are you going to sell your business? So I've been trying to figure out a different way around this. Now, in the meantime, I've got my circle of friends with my friendships. And I went through about 8 months of rigorous social training. And I'm officially at that master level where I can reverse engineer it. So I started to reverse engineer it and I noticed a pattern. I went, oh my God, it's just networking. It's just networking. And I went, okay, so the circle of trust is just platonic networking. It's the exact same thing. So that was fun. Platonic networking. And when I looked at, I was doing some research this morning on networking, and it was the same thing. It's everything I know about networking. And I went, oh, look at that. It's networking. And then I realized, wait a minute, why isn't traditional business models doing this? Now, a successful traditional business model does use business networking on everybody else. And I'm going, what is this funnel bullshit? And I know what the funnel is. I'm going to translate that over to math for you. What it is a sequence. That's really what it is. It's a sequence. But they're using mathematical sequence with criminal psychology. And they've removed the relationship aspect in networking out of their business, which is why they're using criminal psychology. So I realized, well, if business networking is actually just relationship building, it's literally the psychology and the science of relationship building with a sequence. So you're taking sequencing, you're taking math, and you are taking relationships in human connection and economics, literally, and you are combining and merging all of these things together. So there you have it. That is it right there. You've got economics. This is power economics, I have to clarify. You have relationship science, not based on that Freud shit. It's Pythagorean psychology. And then you've got basic networking science. And then you've got the mathematical sequence. So when you take these 4 elements and you put them together, you suddenly have this gorgeous formula for friendships, for coworkers, for businesses, for patrons, for everybody. And it literally can be put across the board. And it's very natural. It's literally the natural sequential progression, sequence progression through any kind of relationship building. And what traditional business models are doing is they're basically cheating. They are bypassing the time that it takes to get this, to get immediate fast results. It's a get rich quick scheme. So to do the cheat code, to cheat and to do the get rich quick, they've bypassed the intimacy work. And they're using manipulation and criminal psychology to bypass all of that, which is why it's so toxic. So you basically instead are focusing on that natural sequence and progression. And this is where it opened up this massive door. And I'm like, oh, well, there you go. So now it's a matter of what kind of a network do you want to be involved in? And this is where a lot of people are not there. This is where a lot of people really are not comprehending this. Is patrons are probably the last people to get on board with this. They really are. And I'm waiting for that time where patrons catch on that they need to be networking to figure out what they need. But again, it takes time. And this is where in order for this to be done properly, it's really important that we understand the definition of the words. So friendship is the reciprocity of nourishment. It's also the same definition as a business deal or a business transaction. It is literally the reciprocity of nourishment. Now, any and all connections you're going to have are going to be, this is human connection in general, is reciprocity of nourishment. And you are doing a trade exchange of resources. And it's either going to be done through entertainment, it's going to be done through information, or it's going to be done for education. And that's it. It's the same thing. It's very, very simple over and over again. So when I put all this together, I realized, okay, a lot of people have really made something very simple complicated, which is your first clue that they don't know what they're doing. So when all of this came to me, massive realizations, took a massive step back, I realized that, and this is why it's so important that you have to know who you are, is because if you don't know who you are going to step into the raw networking pool, and that's going to be a big problem for you. That is going to be a really big problem for you. And this was my problem, was I stepped into this space, and it was not at all where I wanted to be. It was absolutely bringing in the wrong type of people. And I had a whole lot of people, I was really bringing in this wrong demographic. And if anything, it was the demographic I wanted to repel, it was attracting. That's really it, is the demographic that I wanted to repel, it was attracting. And that was a huge problem for me because I was getting a lot of people I want nothing to do with. And in order to repel and attract, this is where linguistic science really gets into it, is you are going to repel and attract keywords. And if you really need to listen to your language, and you really need to know what keywords you should be using and should not be using. And this is where I realized I had to completely change my language. And once I did, it did bring in a completely different clientele. I realized that I was looking for investors. I realized that I needed to go real estate and bankers. And I realized that I did not want to deal with the mental health community, not at all. And I realized that my area was parents. Well, I'm looking for basically life learners. That's my agenda, is the life learners. So yeah, people who value education. That's it really. And that was a big part of it, is life learners and scientists, the professional community. And I noticed that when I started to get deeper into my work, it allowed me to bring me closer to my group. And you can change who you attract and who you repel just by changing a few keywords. It's very, very, it is simple. It is very, very simple. And whenever you're not attracting the right people, when you want somebody and you want to bring them to you, the reason why you're not getting the people you want is because you're using the wrong language. This is where we hear people say, I attract narcissists. No, you don't. Your language does. Your language attracts and repels everything. 100% of everything you draw toward you is your word usage. And before you have word usage, you have your physical appearance. So, and this is it really right here, is your word usage is everything. It's literally the door that opens up and invites people in, and it closes the door for the wrong people. It's literally a 1-0 code. I cannot explain that clear enough. It is a 1-0 code, which is logical code. And when you use a word, if I say the word chakra, that's going to open the door for the wrong people in my work. If I say the word spiritual, going to bring in the wrong people. I say the word physics, I say the word math, it's going to bring in the right people. I say the word logic, I say the word linguistics, and it's going to start bringing in the right people. I use words, and this is where now it's strategically, and I call this strategic deliberation, is because you're not doing it. Basically, deliberation means on purpose. So you're doing it strategically and on purpose, strategic deliberation. So strategic deliberation is the ability to cherry pick precisely who you want around you, when and where, just by your presentation. One of the things that I have for me is I have an actual leather jacket, a purple leather jacket. I love it to pieces. And it very clearly communicates a message to the right people and another message to the people who are wrong for me. And I do this on purpose so that I make it clear where I stand on certain things. And I also do it for mental health purposes. So there's a lot that when you start to put yourself out there, and if you are not comfortable, if you are, yeah, that's right, that's it right there, is if you are not comfortable with your own people, if you're constantly on guard and aggressive, you don't have the right people around you. And the concept of a training wheel friend is the ability to, it gets you in the right mindset. Okay, this person's going to be a training wheel friend. Every friendship needs to start off as a training wheel friend. You are learning how to be a friendship, and it allows you to stay open-minded to the lesson while also adamant to defend, like, I'm going to be a tree. This is who I am. And if you're not in training wheel friendship mode, what ends up happening with a lot of people, especially if you're new to socializing, is you will too willingly surrender yourself. And suddenly you've given up too much of yourself and you've conformed to their ways. And it's not a question of who's conformed to who, it's do you even match? And that's really it's this matching idea of you're not wanting to mold each other. You're going to have tree people and then you're going to have mirror people. Do not be two mirror people. That's so bad for you. What you want is two tree people, and the trees need to be the same tree. And what we see a lot of is a tree person matches up with a mirror person, and then the mirror person becomes the tree. Now, if the mirror person wants to become that tree, it's a great match. If the mirror person has their own tree and they've matched up with the wrong tree, it's not going to go well for them. So your ideal is you need to know what kind of a tree you are. You need to be a tree, and then you need to put on your training wheel, so to speak, go through the friendship actions, practice it, and look for signs of similarities. Where are you the same? And how are you different? And this is it right here, is tally up. This is like a worksheet. I'm going to do this worksheet because this is right here is a solid worksheet that we all can easily use. Is how are you the same and how are you different? And then track it. Track it. If you have majority same, but it's not just the majority, you're also going to have your anchor points. Now, my anchor points are not negotiable. And it was funny because it was about 2 days ago, I was in a business meeting with somebody, and I sat down with them over my anchor points. And I said, you need to know this. In working with me and being around me, I have anchor points. And if we conflict on the anchor points, it's not going to work. If you are not on my anchor points, you should not be around me. And I will not budge. I will defend my anchor points, but I'm not going to do the work to defend. If you contradict my anchor points, I will drop you like a hot pancake. It's that simple. I do not, either you know about my anchor points and you support them and you are aligned with them, or you need to just not be around me. And that's it right there, is, are you aligned on my anchor points? And this is the very first question that every person really needs to just come down to, is what are your anchor points and are you aligned on the anchor points? And if you are not aligned on your anchor points, they are not your people. These are the parts of you that are not negotiable. They're not deal breakers. It is, you should not even be trying to have a friendship with these people to begin with. A deal breaker is, you've already compared anchor points. You're already on board with each other. You're a great match, and they did something, and you're not going to forgive them. That is a whole different conversation. It means you failed to look at the anchor points. The anchor point is the foundation of you. This is why you need to know who you are before you have friendships. If you cannot identify your anchor points, then this is not going to go well. Now, this is where if you are in the middle of healing, this is going to be a problem, because, and I did this yesterday, I had a 4-graph process over this one, where depending upon where you are in the healing process versus, there's 3 healing, well, there's 1, I'm not even trying to heal. There are 2, I'm healing, and then there's the I am healed. And all 4 of those people, each one of those stages has their own anchor point. And this is actually not an anchor point. but this is basically your core value that guides each healing process, and it does change. The first one, this is the people who don't heal, is we accept everybody. And it is truly a non-judgment space. That's true. It is a non-judgment space. But here's the catch. The people who go to this group are the ones who have been filtered out of the other three groups for good reason. So this is now the catch-all, literally the catch-all of the lowest quality. These are the people who are so toxic that they are, most of them are drug addicts. Most of them are suicidal, and no one else will tolerate them because they are that toxic. So while it looks good on paper, we accept everybody without judgment, it's actually not a good thing to be. Because the next one is, let me see if I can find the exact wording, because this is really it. Let me go back to the papers and find it. Because this next one is, oh yes, I remember. You have to have the requirement, you got to be healing. You have to be healing. So this is their requirement. You have to be working on yourself. You have to be working on you. I remember when I was here, this was my only requirement of people. You just have to be working on yourself. This is not good enough, because you might be working on yourself, but you might be a walking time bomb constantly exploding every 2 minutes. And I'm going to point out, these are the people who did not want the other people who aren't even working on themselves. Just to give you an idea of the quality of the people who default to that ground area of we accept everybody. What they're really saying is we accept everybody who isn't working on themselves and who is so emotionally unstable, you're dangerous. The next one is you have to be working on you. Doesn't matter what stage or how well it's going, you just got to be working on you. That's a really low standard. And the next one is you have to be optimistic. You have to be working on yourself, and you have to be optimistic. Now, the problem with this is when you get into that group, you've already been in the you have to be working on you. You know what that's like. You realize that, wow, you're really negative. I need to get into an optimistic group because it's too negative. So now you move and you graduate to stage 3. And the only requirement in that club is you have to be optimistic. Now you're in that optimistic club, but what about the days when you're feeling like shit? So now you have a fair weather environment where they only want the good side of you and they don't want anything to do with the bad side. But it's not going to be talked about. Everyone's going to be like going around smiling. It's going to be, and then you're going to have people who have meltdowns because it's an extreme. It is intolerant of any kind of movement or flexibility. And that's the problem with that, is it is inflexible. It is unforgiving. And sure enough, the moment if you are anything but optimistic, they will remove you so fast. You get back to you have to be working on you. That's a really, really broad terminology. And we're going to go back to the dregs of society of we'll take anyone no matter what. Well, now you're looking at the societal dregs. So your options now are societal dregs, vague, unpredictable, most likely highly negative, because if you're positive, you're in the positive group. So now the negative ones who don't cut it for the positive healing side are now all defaulted to the negative. So this is really what you've got. You've got the dregs of society who are all saying, well, we'll take anybody. What they're really doing is taking the leftovers, societal dregs. The next group, you have to be working on you, is actually all of the negative people who are working on themselves. Because all of the positive people who are working themselves are in the positive group, being positive all the time. And they don't want to go back to the negative group because they just came from there and it was terrible. So now they've got two extremes. I have to be surrounded by a bunch of negative people, or I have to fake constant positivity all the time. This is not human. And now there's this massive societal pressure on the positive people where they have to be positive no matter what. So these are what's really going on behind these psychological requirements that these 4 clubs have invented. The last stage, and this is where I am, is you have to be authentic, you have to be healed, and you have to be genuine, which is the same as authentic. Authentic and healed, because I'm all done with mental illness. I'm all done with the healing journey. I'm not using that language anymore. I know what gets a person healed because I did it. I don't have a mindset of, oh, I'm going to be doing this forever. No, there's an end. I found it. I did it. Woohoo. Now I get to be abundant and celebrate. That's what I'm doing. So I'm in the abundant celebration mindset. So this is me. I'm in the abundance and the celebration mindset because I've accomplished the goal. Now, when I was in the fake positive, be positive or else group, they kept telling me that I was mentally ill and unstable. And I'm like, why am I here? And it does, you will heal, you will move to the next stage before you leave and exit the societal group. So with the authentic healed, and this is really what it is when you're authentic and healed, it literally, life turns into a party. It's really a fucking party over here. It's a party. It's amazing. The mindset's completely different. Everything truly is peaceful. It is so lax and calm. So that's your authentic healed. Everything is awesome. Everything is awesome. And then whoever's not healed, they default to that positive, you have to be optimistic group. And everybody who's negative gets kicked out. So now all the negative flows over to this is literally overflow. Now all the negative flows over to that second group of, you just have to be working on yourself, real low standard. And then once you're there, that just falls over to the catch-all quality drugs of life. So those are the four actual groups of the mental health journey: is your dregs, your negative, your positive, and you are healed and authentic. And that's it right there, authentic and healed. So going back to those anchor points, your anchor points are not those four qualifiers. That's vital to this. This is the part that people don't understand, is your anchor points are not those. And when you talk to somebody who's a dreg, they will say, well, I don't have any anchor points. I'm going to accept everybody. I don't judge anybody. No, you're going to get the dregs. That's what you're going to get. The next group is going to say, well, they just have to be working on themselves. I don't have an anchor point. That's not it. That's no standards. That just means you're going to get the negative people. Because the positive people are going to be together saying, you just have to be optimistic. You have to be upbeat. You have to be heading toward that goal and healing. And that's what I call the delusion of the oasis. Now, once you are authentic, once you are healed, you're having a party and you're great. Now, that's when you develop your anchor points. That's when you develop your anchor points. Now, here's the problem. Any friendships you develop between stages 1 through 3 are not going to come with you to the healthy land. They will not. They will not. Because people do not grow at the same pace. So I just cut out 2 people from my life, and I didn't really cut them out. It was just I'm going to distance myself. They're in a different space. One is in the negative. She's in the negative stage. My other friend was in the positive stage. I couldn't stand it. Oh my God, it was unbearable. And that's like, I'm like removed myself completely. And if they make it over, okay, the rate they're going, it's going to be about 5 years before they get here. I'm just removed, completely removed from it. So, and now I'm over in the abundance, celebration, authentic stage. And now I've developed my anchor points. The 7 anchor points that I have are not negotiable. They're not deal breakers. It means that these are the bare minimum requirements. And the first one is truth and logic. The next one is the 12 ethics. Truth and logic and 12 ethics. Did I have any others? I know I had others. But those are really, oh yes. Well, I'm going to say freedom. Everything I say really just comes back to the 12 ethics. But really, that's it. Truth, logic, 12 ethics. Here, let me actually pull it up here because I do have that list. I put it together. It was wonderful. And I'm like, yeah, this is not negotiable. I did, yeah, let me see here. Oh, here it is. Truth, logic, 12 ethics. Yeah, everything is a variation of those. Everything else is a variation. Yeah. Yeah. So everything, and that's really what it comes down to, is truth, logic, 12 ethics. That's where my loyalty lies. And that is my, it's not a deal breaker, because we're not going to be making a deal if you don't fit those requirements. That's really what people are not processing. Why are you making a deal without your anchor points in place? And this is where human uneducated people do not know about sequencing. And what's happening is they are putting the cart before the horse, because their sequence is constantly out of order. And this is one of the most primary out of order sequences that really screws up a person's life. 100% of all of your problems is because your sequence is out of order. 100% of all of your problems is your sequence is out of order. You have a priority that should be a symptom. You have prioritized a consequence. That is the problem. And you have abandoned an independent catalyst. That is why you have a problem. Every single time. This is the reoccurring theme I see over and over again. So in this particular case, where the sequence is out of order is you have your anchor points, and then you have your deal. Your deal should not be made before your anchor points. Your anchor points are the independent catalyst. And this is what people do not understand. They make a deal without the anchor points. The deal is the consequence. So you do this, and there is no such thing as deal breaker. This is the biggest problem I have with people. I will say things like, I don't do deal breakers. I have no deal breakers. And I don't have deal breakers. And then people go, oh my God, well, what if they abuse you? I don't make deals with people who don't have my core anchor points. So if you are abusive, you're not going to be having a deal with me to break. That's why I have no deal breakers, because I'm not going to be making a deal with you if you don't even meet the basic standard requirements. And this is where people just don't get it. This is it right here. You need to have your anchor points before you make the deal. And every time you're abused, it's because you do not have your anchor points. This is it. This is why people have friendships they shouldn't have. This is why people get into relationships that they should not be in. This is why people are stuck going, oh my God, I'm in love with this person, but they treat me like shit. You developed the relationship before you defined the anchor points. And the anchor points are the things that are what you would call the deal breaker. But we're right back to the question of, why are you making a deal with somebody who isn't on the same page with you? Why didn't you do the work before you made the deal? And this is the sequence that people really mess up. This is the number one sequence that everyone uses to fuck up their life. This is what fucks up your life, is the sequence is out of order. Another sequence that a lot of people fuck up is the self sequence. The self sequence is how you have self-mastered. That's the first thing. You must master the self first. That is going to be your foundation. And the foundation is literally it's the independent catalyst. It is the only thing that requires nothing else. It is the independent catalyst. The next thing that happens after that is the social mastery. You are not going to be able to master social skills until you have a mastered self. Self first and then social later. Now, after you've mastered the social skills, then you can step into the networking world. And same thing applies. You are going to want to master networking, and social mastery is the circle of trust with the 12 ethics. However, the networking is the sequence of relationship mastery. So you've already mastered the circle of trust. You already have that figured out, and now you're going to amplify it with deliberate networking. Now you're using strategic deliberation. And that's when you go through the status of the circle of trust, but it's with intent. So it's the circle of trust with intent. Really, that's it. Circle of trust with intent. So I'm going to say deliberate intent, and I want to show you the difference here. So with the social mastered skills, the intent is to learn how to people. That's your intent. Now, you are not going to want that intent when you are networking. That is not your intent. You do not want to go into a networking tent saying, I'm here to learn how to people. You should not be in a networking event until you have learned how to people. So what you're really doing in the networking event is you're not learning how to people. You've already learned how to people. Your intent is to build true, do I want the word true? Your connections. That's it. You want to build your connections to obtain your end goal. Completely different mindset, completely different agenda, completely different everything. So your self-mastered foundation and then your social mastery, that is where you are learning how to people. And this is where I love to use with training wheel friends. Expect to lose these people. You will lose these people. You will lose these people. If you get lucky enough to keep them, I'm going to tell you, you're lucky. It's rare. After that, you're going to move into the networking area, and that is where the intent is going to change to, you're not learning how to people now. Now you are learning how to build your connection to obtain your end goal. And and this is beautiful. Now, once you get to that point, that's when you get the trade circle going. Really, that's when you start to get the circuit going. And then once you get the circle going, that is when you end up with patrons, you end up with investors, and you end up with friends. This is where it happens. Patrons, investors, or friends. That's what you end up walking away with, or coworkers. Let's do collaborators. And there it is. Yeah, that is perfect. So so those are your stages. That is your sequence of friendship. That is your sequence of social development. That is your sequence of going from I'm an infant all the way up to I am a successful, abundant adult. That is your order of operations that you need to follow. That is a vital, vital sequence. And the sequence over and over again, everything is in sequence. I cannot express to you how much 100% of everything is a sequence. And the more sequences you know, a sequence is another word, by the way, for formula. But if you don't know the science of formula, well, you're fucked. And that's why a lot of people are fucked. Is because they don't know the science of formula. They don't know what a sequence is. They don't understand that a sequence is literally a series of independence and one independent and dependence with a common denominator that is a foundation that's built off of the predecessor. That's all it is foundational sequencing of dependence and independence with predecessors and successors. So this is why 2 has a foundation of 1, and why 3 has a foundation of 2, and 4 has a foundation of 3, because 4 has 3 and 2 and 1 in it. And it can be broken down in any, you cannot have a 2 that has a 5, not going to work. Because 2 is dependent on 1, but 5 is dependent on 1, 2, 3, 4. In any kind of a combination, it's dependent on 1, 2, 3, 4. 10 is dependent on 1 through 9, but 9 is not dependent on 10. 9 is going to be 9 without 10, because it's the independent of 10, but 10 is the dependent of 9. Now, this is math. This is basic mathematical numbers. But music is this way. Relationships are this way. Everything you have is this way. Your genetics is this way. Your understanding is this way. Your logic is this way. Your mental health is this way. You don't understand mathematical sequencing of logic, and you can't function, which is why you can't function, which is why you have mental illness. It's because your sequencing is messed up. Once you know the sequencing, you can fix everything. Oh, I just need to stop putting the cart before the horse. Yeah, you just have the cart before the horse. That's the only problem you've got. That's not a mental illness. That's a mathematical problem. You are a mathematical delinquent. A lot of people are. That's the only problem with you. And once you fix the mathematical sequence, the whole thing works out. It's perfect. This is how I fixed all of my mental illnesses in a year. I found the sequence. I was like, oh, look at this. There's a mathematical pattern. I put the pattern in the right order and boop, it worked. Because it's all sequencing. It's all literally relationships between who's dependent on what and in what order. I am dependent upon my parents who are dependent upon their parents who are dependent upon their parents. Now you've got a genetic line. So when you have these two sequences are the core sequences. These are the first two sequences. You have the sequence of your life stream, your primary life sequence. And then after that, you have the understanding of what your anchor points are, and that you should not be making deals without your anchor points. And suddenly there's no such thing as a deal breaker. You don't have a deal breaker because you're not making deals with people who don't match up to your anchor points. So if you find people who are on board with your anchor points, you're fine. Like that's really all it is your anchor points. So for me, my anchor points are logic, 12 ethics, freedom. Well, we're back to ethics again. The 12 ethics, logic, and these formulas, which is truth. So I'm good. My sequence, my everything is the words, and the words that match my truth, my logic, my 12 ethics. That's all it is. So if somebody is not aligned to those, if they violate those, we're done. You violate those, and I can't have anything else with you. And it's going to take at least 3 months before someone violates those. This is why I love the 12 ethics, is because the 12 ethics, when you have these 12 common denominators, it really eliminates all the bullshit. I will tell you what these 12 common denominators are. Everybody in the world, okay, I did a lot of research on what makes you happy. What do you wish everyone did? Where are your regrets? I looked up everything, and I took everything that everyone said over 30 years, and those are the 12 common denominators. People kept saying, well, I wish other people were responsible. I wish I had done this more. These are literally the accumulation of everyone's wishes. And every single wish that was made points back at the 12 ethics. And it's the 12 points that everyone keeps fighting about. It's the 12 points that every abuser violates. It's the 12 points that every narcissist violates. And when you're happy, it's the 12 common denominators of happiness. That's really what they are. They are the 12 common denominators of happiness. And when you're not happy or you're being abused, it's because somebody's violating the 12 points of happiness. Really, that's it. It's the 12 common denominators of happiness. And it's extraordinary. The 12 common denominators of happiness. And I'm probably going to change the name to that. They are the 12 ethics, but it's the 12 common denominators of happiness. Really, that's it. Every fucking person who's happy has these 12 things in common. Every fucking person who's happy and wealthy has those 12 common denominators in common. Everyone who is miserable and or are poor have those 12 ethics broken. Everyone who's aggressive breaks them. Everyone who's bad breaks them. Everyone who's good does them. The more you do them, the happier you are. The less you do them, the worse you are. And it's a spectrum. It was phenomenal to see how accurate these 12 common denominators are. These are the 12 common denominators of happiness. And when you integrate them, you get the 4 cardinal values. And when you integrate those, you get love. It's the ingredients of love. It's extraordinary. It's amazing. So when you go in and you're like, the common denominators, guys, common denominators. Like if you can't follow the common denominators of happiness, it's not hard. The only part that's hard is if you've been trained to not follow them because you've been abused that badly. And actually, if you go through the 12 common denominators, you can tell how you were abused. Oh, that's another formula. That's another sequence. People who are like, oh my God, I don't have courage. Okay, yeah, you probably had an over-enabling narcissistic mother. Oh my God, I have a problem with self-regulation. Oh, that's because you had a narcissistic father, most likely, who disrupted your ability to lay a boundary. Your boundaries were violated when you were a child. That's why. Oh, well, I have a problem with self-authority. Yeah, because most likely you had a religion that compromised your ability to have your own opinion because you had to do everything the religion or the parents said. So your self-authority was compromised because your parents interfered with your own independence. Back to non-consent again. I don't know how to use boundaries. Yeah, that's because whenever you tried to use a boundary, it was violated. So you never had the freedom to exercise your own independence to realize the importance of a boundary. It was never psychologically safe enough for you to lay out a boundary. I'm not accountable. Yeah, that's probably because you never were able to get the 4 foundations, which is courage, trust. Trust is the accumulation of all of them. Courage, self-authority, self-regulation, and then your ability to do boundaries. When you combine these 4, that's the foundation for accountability. You don't do these 4 things, you're not going to have accountability. Once you have accountability, then you can learn self-value. Now you know what your worth is. But if you never made it through the first 5 foundations, you're not going to have the prerequisites for self-value, which is why you have no self-value. Low self-esteem, because they violated these. Every combination, everything wrong comes down to these 12 common denominators, no matter how you maneuver them. The 12 common denominators of happiness. It's extraordinary. It is mathematically perfect, which is the 11th ethic, logic. So when you're putting all of these together, when you're looking at a problem you're having, what you're really running into over and over again is your lack of a sequence. You've either you're missing gaps of your sequence, and there's only 4 problems. You either are you have gaps in your sequence, you have incorrect information in your sequence, it is out of order. Maybe there's only 3. Yeah, there's 4 elements. The 4th one is actually it being logical. So yeah, so you have gaps, you have an incorrect information, which is a lie, or it's out of order. And that's it right there. Gaps would be you have incorrect information. Okay, no, there is a 4th one. It's not relevant. That's what it is. It's the irrelevancy. It's when you have something that does not belong. It's when you have an anomaly inside you're calculating a factor that's not relevant to the equation. Let's do that non-scientifically. You are counting for something that's not related to it. It's not relevant. And so you're yeah, it's the red herring. You have a red herring. That's what you have. So you have a gap, incorrect information, out of order, or you have a red herring. 4 elements. That's all that's wrong. You have those 4 elements identified, and now you know, oh, that's why my sequence is all wrong. So all you are doing whenever you build a problem, every time you are trying to analyze or diagnose a problem, the other thing is your sequence is messed up. Now, the other side of this is the infamous logic loop, which is literally an absence of logic. You literally have a logical argument without logic, which is why it doesn't make sense. Don't be an Elmer. Don't be an Elmer. Love that line. I went nuts over it. It was this beautiful, I was watching Umbrella Academy last night, and they were doing this beautiful like logic loop of the grandfather fallacy or the grandfather paradox. A paradox is a logical word. Literally, it's a word in the science of logic that basically means a catch-22 or a logic loop. And when you have a logic loop, it means that you've lost logic in your proof. Your proof is without logic. And as a result, the logic pulls in on itself. So you've got one of these going, and now you've got a logic loop. This is what PTSD is you have a logic loop. And it's because you have a gap. You have a gap in your logic. That's all it is. You have a gap in your logic. That's all it is. You cannot have a logical gap. You cannot destroy an independent because the entire dependent will fall apart. So if a dependent attacks the independent, then the independent will cease to exist. You cannot have, if you take out an independent, the whole thing will fall apart. The independents must remain independent. They cannot be altered by a dependent. You cannot have an independent that's altered by a dependent. You cannot, because it depends on it. So if you take out the thing that it depends on, it ceases to exist. Now you've got a logic loop. So what you need to do is literally segue to escape. Literally, you need to create an escape loop. This is how you cure a logic loop, is you need to create an escape loop or an escape clause. Oh, look at that. Okay, so I do believe that's actually already created, and it's in writing, escape clause. Escape closet. This is so funny. I know this is already in existence. I know it is. I know it is. I just gotta look it up. An escape clause isn't any clause, term, or condition in a contract. It's illegal. It's illegal. That's how I know about it. Okay. It's so funny. I'm like, I know that that's a real word. I know. As soon as I said it, I'm like, I know that. I know that very well. So you need an escape clause. If you have an addiction, you need 3 escape clauses. That's all. You're just missing 3 escape clauses. I cannot tell you enough how much this is literally the core of your problem. Is you have a logical problem. You don't have any problems. You just have logic problems. You study logic and you're done. You're fine. Logic is what causes mental illness. Well, here, let's just do this. You study logic and poof, you can fix yourself. So when you have an addiction, you have 3 logic loops, which means you need 3 escape clauses. And my program breaks down those 3 escape clauses for you. So any logical clause or any logical loop, you just need the 3 escape clauses. You need one for every clause. And then one of my favorites is, if it is narcissism, then I will do the opposite. If it is narcissism, then I will do the opposite. So, and that's it right there. If it is narcissism, then I will do the opposite. That clause cures narcissism, but you've got to define all the elements of narcissism, which is available in the Narcissist Cure. Link is down below. So you have to define all the components of narcissism. And again, I've already done that. So, and with addiction, you just need 3 escape clauses. And that is also in my primary course for radical. I should just go through all of them. Borderline personality disorder. You need to change your first logic, which is what love is. You basically have a corrupted love definition. And if you have multiple personality disorder, you are disintegrated to the point where you're facing the wrong way. You just have to reverse your integration. I can do this with every mental illness. It's literally just a logical clause for each and every one of them. And you might have 4 or 5 different logic loops, and it goes right to the core of it. So I really should just simplify it and go right down to what are the logical cores and the escape clauses. So you basically need the the escape clause, and you need the correct if-then clause. You have the correct if-then clause, and then you define it, you'll be fine. And it's all language, because that's what logic is. It's language. So you need to change your language, which will change the logic in your mind. Don't touch your mindset. Your mindset is a consequence. And this is where a lot of people fuck up the sequence again, where they will spend all of this time focusing on their symptoms, which is a dependent, and they'll ignore the independent. But the independent is the one who gets to decide everything. So instead of addressing the independent, they'll focus on the symptom, which is equivalent to, you have an amputated arm. Oh, I'm going to go ahead and put a Band-Aid on my toe. Focus on the problem. So you have the problem, and this is where a lot of people don't understand mathematical sequencing. The problem is caused by an invisible catalyst, which takes place prior to the first abuse, to the first symptom. The symptoms are visible, not the cause. Not the cause. If you can see it, it's wrong. If you can see a symptom, it's wrong. That's not the problem. The problem is always invisible. That's the catalyst. But you want to go before there's a problem. So I want to imagine this. World ends on, I'm going to go umbrella. No, I can't do that. That's spoilers. Let's do something different. Let's say world ends on the October 1st. You are going to not want to show up on October 1st. You show up on October 1st and you're fucked. Okay. You don't want, let's do Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Okay. You don't want to show up the day the Vogon constructor fleet arrives. You don't want that. You don't want to show up on that Tuesday. You want to show up preferably 5 years before. That'll give you plenty of time. You want to make sure that whatever catalyst you want to show up when they first give you the pamphlet that says Earth has been assigned for deconstruction, and if you have an objection, you need to file a complaint with our complaint department. That is what you want. You want to go all the way back when that first announcement arrives, and you want to go through the process of objecting with I have a problem with you objecting to this process. That is really what you need to do. So you're going to want to give yourself 5 years. You don't want to show up the day of. And this is where a lot of people will try and fix their problem, is they will try and collect the remnants of the exploded Earth, and they'll try and assemble those. And that's how they fix problems. That's not going to fix your problem. That is not problem solving at all. That is like, that's cleanup on aisle 8. And that's what a lot of people are doing. Is a lot of people are doing cleanup on aisle 8. I'm gonna use it this way. Policeman decides to show up because there's been a homicide. Why are they showing up after the homicide? They need to show up before there's even a problem. They get a call about a domestic violence situation. They show up after. The police are not preventative. They're cleanup. They're cleanup on aisle 9. That's what they do. You don't want to do cleanup. You want to do preventative. Now, the next group of people are going to be the people who focus on the first problem, the first moment of explosion. You don't want to do this because there's already a problem. You want to get ahead of the problem and go to the source. The source is your parents. The source is always your parents. If you are in therapy not talking about your parents, you are wasting your time and your money. Your therapist is a fucking idiot. You need to only be talking about your parents because that's really the origin of your problem. And really what it comes down to is your definition of love. That's it. You've got 3 choices. Love is nourishment to grow. Either your parents nourished you to grow or they didn't. That's it. And they compromised your, it's basically your grief process has been corrupted, and it's your conditional belonging. This is really, really basic. Conditional belonging, conditional love, grief process, nourishment, growth, and that is literally the core of all trauma right there. Is instead of getting nourishment to love, you were told that love means being needed, or love means needing others. So love is now synonymous with need. And now you are in a transaction mindset of I am a possession or I need to be owned. And now you're in a slave mindset because they have corrupted your freedom. In addition to that, they are also threatening your belonging, which is your safety, your security, your everything, which is now corrupting your ability to grieve what you potentially could lose, which is your own survival. So that's at the core of all trauma and every person on this planet. If you have this problem, you're going to have mental illness. You solve that, it all goes away. Now, in addition to solving that, it's just the escape clauses that you need with the correct if-then clauses to correct all of the programming. You do that, and it literally resolves all your mental illness. It's just a question of what's going on with your sequence. So you have one sequence, and this is it, is you either have the natural sequence, the healthy sequence, and then you have one alternative sequence. So you have the natural sequence and the unnatural sequence. Now, the unnatural sequence is literally the same sequence, but was it disrupted here? Was it disrupted here? Was it disrupted here? And you've only got 3 options. And once you get those 3 options, then it doesn't even get sub-offshoots. It's just a severity of progression. So now it's, you were disrupted here at point A, and now everything from that point is just a progression. You were disrupted at point B, and everything is a progression. Or you were disrupted at C and everything was a progression. So really are you on the natural, if you're not healthy, you're not on the natural sequence. You're on the unnatural sequence. The question now is, unnatural sequence, were you disrupted at A, B, C, and how long? So now you're looking at when it was initially first disrupted and the duration in which it was disrupted. That's all it is. That's simple. Now you've got basically 5 formulas. And those 5 formulas will correct that, put you back over to the natural line, and you'll be fine. Yes, it's that simple. This is how I literally cured all of my mental illnesses in 1 year. So it's all in my Radical Global Healing Plan Simplified. You can click on the link below and it walks you through the process. It's free. So I'm sitting here now looking at really just that as those 2 core sequences, is making sure that your anchor points come first. And yeah, that's it. Just your anchor points come first. As soon as you have your anchor points coming first, that really does a lot to solidify. Yeah. And it's making sure that you understand sequencing. So once you understand how sequencing affects your mental health, how sequencing is all of mental health, it's so easy to manage. And then you can start to see it everywhere. You'll be able to realize, you'll talk to somebody and, oh, your sequence is out of line. Oh, you just need to fix your sequence. You'll have a problem come up. Oh, I just don't know what the independent of the sequence is. That's a big one. A lot of people don't know the independent of the sequence. You're building a business. You are actually locating all of the sequences. This is what a funnel is. You're putting them all in the right order of operations, and then you are locating the independent. This is a big one. A lot of people do not know what the independent is. A lot of people don't know what the independent is. This is actually what I'm reverse engineering today, is what is the independent. I figured out the 4 levels of independence. So the independents are the independents are how you get people into your business. And that's where you get, that's lead generation. However, your independence, and this is the 4 types of lead generation, the 4 types of how you get people in. You have your advertisement. You have your advertisement. So I do it this way. Either you're going to do an individual one-to-one, or you're going to do one hit massive impact. The one hit massive impact is an ad. The PR agent is one hit massive amounts. No matter what you do, you've written a book, you're going to need advertisement or PR to get that book out. You open a business, you're going to need advertisement or PR. One of the 2 of them. If you don't have the one hit multiple people, then you're going to have to do one hit per person. Dumbest fucking thing in the world. One hit per person. So you do one, that's door-to-door sales. That's why you get into the numbers game. That is the most inefficient, dumbest thing in the world, is the door-to-door, and that's your cold calling. And that is one hit per person. And now you're looking at, okay, well, I can only do a 30-minute. This is where people are like, oh, well, let's do 50. This is the most inefficient, high cost, high energy, low ROI. That is dumb business. That is businessmen really being fucking stupid about business. Now, word of mouth is generated out of a consequence of you have a really fucking good product. That's word of mouth. And that is actually when the ignition has already taken place. And that's when the thing goes. So when you are looking at where word of mouth is in this ratio, what you are really dealing with is word of mouth is not actually part of it. Word of mouth is something that is a result of all of this. It's literally self-generating. So you really have DIY. We're back to the door-to-door. Yeah, it's the door-to-door sales. I just realized where my chain reaction is messed up, so I can fix it like right. And I'm like, oh, that's why how I did it wrong. This is what I'm reverse engineering today. This is why I'm reverse engineering it, is because I am analyzing the science of chain reaction and where businesses keep getting this messed up. And no one understands the science of this catalyst, which is why there is a problem. And once you fix this, because everyone's great with getting their funnel set up, but you are trying to figure out the catalyst. And the catalyst is where a lot of people run into a problem. So your catalyst options are door-to-door sales or cold calling. Same thing. Really, it's the same thing. I've done both. Cold calling. And that's literally low cost. High energy, but it is hunter mentality. So it's high energy, low ROI, which is just the dumbest fucking thing in the world, because it's high resource cost with little to no return. Dumbest fucking business, dumb business. This is stupid business. Stupid business. And that's hunter mentality. The next one is if you are public speaking stages and podcasts. That is smarter, but you're high impact, high energy, high ROI. Public speaking stages and podcasts. That's actually, we're getting better. Let me go ahead and put this in order of productivity. Ads is, again, we're back to low impact, high energy, but low ROI. It's going to be really cost inefficient because, and a lot of people, and I've done this, a lot of people will tell you it will not work unless you have revenue. So ads are something you should be doing later. And you should have an income, and like income is required. Your business should be generating profit before you do ads, or you need the capital going in. And that's it. It is the most So I would really put ads elsewhere. Now, word of mouth, a lot of people want word of mouth, but word of mouth is not something you get until the chain reaction has been ignited. It is not how you ignite, it is a consequence of igniting. And that's because people love what you've done and they're talking about it. So word of mouth actually comes from your first product, and it's after you get results in. So it is not something you should be relying on at all. And ads are something you can use to continue to generate and bring it in. So what you're looking at doing with ads and word of mouth is you are wanting to generate that cycle all on its own. And in order to pull that off, you're actually going to need networking. And this is the key part here that a lot of people miss, is that networking for the catalyst. Networking for catalyst. And that is what a lot of people are missing, is the networking for catalyst. Now, you also have PR agent, which is fantastic, but it's going to need an upfront cost, high impact, low energy, ROI, but high resource. It is high resource. But you have to have high resource required. There you go. There it is. So when you are, and this is all about sequencing. So, yeah. So this is literally ordering. And when you understand the order of operations, when you understand what is the dependent on what, and that's it, is people think, oh, word of mouth is great. Word of mouth is not the catalyst. It's not the independent. You got to find the independent. The independent is the thing that has no prerequisites. It is literally no prerequisites. Your parents are not an independent. Their prerequisite is their parents. You want the origin, and then you have the parent, which is literally your immediate predecessor, and then you have the dependent. So you want the origin. The origin is the actual only true. There's only one independent. So if you want to be a business owner, you are actually not building an origin. If you want to be an entrepreneur, you are building the origin. Big difference. Self-employed, you are not building an origin. You are building a parent. Business owners build parents, not origins. Apple is an origin. It is an original. It is the only. It is 100% an independent. It is the foundation. With business and self-employment, you're actually just building a glorified 9-to-5. It's the same level of work. If you've ever read Rich Dad Poor Dad, he has the business quadrant. He has a graph, and there's one side of the graph, and it's 9-to-5. It's employed and self-employed, and he has them grouped together. And this is why. It's because those are the parents. Those are the parents and the dependents. They're actually both dependents because they have prerequisites in order to be met. But I can't remember what the other one is. This one. Business owner is when you start to become an independent. Investor is when you start to become an independent. And that is the difference, is you are now looking at the origin of the chain reaction, which means it doesn't matter what's happening on the outside. Your origin is not going to be touched. It's not going to be affected because it's not dependent on anything. So you can't lose your job. It can't fail or tank. There's no dependence. You do not want a dependent. And that's it right there. You do not want a dependent on your life. You do not want a dependent on your job. You do not want a dependent on your finances. This is suicide. This is a death mission. You don't want this. Your job, your finances, your life, and your happiness should not have dependence. I'm sorry, they should not be dependent on anything. And this is the problem. This is where you don't have freedom. This is where you end up with a lot of problems because these things are now required. They have prerequisites. So if you're wanting to be free, if you're wanting to have that financial freedom, if you're wanting to have that life you want, you've got to become an independent. In order to do that, you have to go to the origin. You have to create an origin. You must create an origin. So people sit there and say word of mouth. Word of mouth is dependent upon your sales, is dependent upon your patrons, which means you're not going to generate word of mouth right out of the gate. So that is not something at all you can use to amplify your message. Door-to-door sales, because your voice, and this is it right here, it is your voice leads to door-to-door sales or cold calling. DIY public speaking. Your voice leads to DIY public speaking stage and podcast. PR agent. Now we're back to your voice. And that's going to include the reach or the network. It's literally network. So PR agents are your voice plus their network. And that's what it is right there. Your voice plus their network. Your voice plus your network. This is real. I love breaking down the science to this stuff. And then when you are looking at door-to-door sales and cold calling, dumbest fucking thing in the world. Your voice plus no network, which is why it's so fucking stupid. So fucking stupid. You need a network to pull this shit off. So before you even can do any of these, now we're going to come down here. You need to be looking at networking for Catalyst. So that's where you are at, is you are literally now looking at your network for Catalyst. And that's really what you're doing. So the very first line in all of this is your network. That is the catalyst, is you building your network. Now we're going to be having a completely different conversation, because now you are looking for networking for agenda. Now going back over to the initial, this is your life network, is you've got to have a mastered self, you've got to have a social mastered, and then you have your network is getting unlocked. So that's where you can start building and developing that. You are still not going to get any kind of income until you have trade. So this is really, if you want to be free, if you want to have a life you want, this is the order of events. And what happens is a person is mentally unstable, they want to build a business, and they're told, just do this funnel, which is just here, build the sequence, but you're not told about networking. You are not told about the order of operations, and they assume you have the capital. They naturally assume you have the capital. It is the first kind of scam that is out there, is they assume you've got the capital. And here's the thing is, if you've got the capital, then you don't have a problem, because you've got the fucking capital. Now you're looking at that catch-22 again of, well, I need money to create a business. No, you don't. You need a network to create a business. But the business scammers don't want you to know that, because then they can't get your money. You can bypass money with a network, but you got to know who to network with. You got to know about networking. Network is literally the core to all of this, and that's what starts all of this. You build your right network, and then it's going up. Now, here's the problem. If you don't have your understanding of social skills or the self, you're not going to be able to build the network that's going to match up to you. So you'll be wasting your time in the wrong network with the wrong people, attracting the wrong people, and there's a lot of noise out there where they're going to be pulling you all over the place. Oh, this is where I fell into this problem. Is I had every fucking person in the world telling me what they wanted me to do with their invested interest because they wanted my money. And that's where it's scammer rich. So once you understand, again, your relativity and everything to what these things are, it really puts a lot into perspective for you, so you know precisely where you need to navigate and how you need to move things. And that's really what this is. That's what all this is about. So thank you. And may the truth always find you.